sound.
All right, good evening, everyone. Can one of our panelists give us a thumbs up if you can hear us on the hybrid part of this meeting? Thumbs up from the panelists. All right, thanks, John, I appreciate it. So good evening, I'm Corey Stern, the Community Services Director for Los Alamos County. This is a project that has been in some form or fashion since 2015. The original iteration of this project was EMBA Right Center up at Perito Mountain. Back when there was a conversation that the county was potentially going to own the ski hole. There was another iteration of a flow trail that went through quite a bit of public comment, looking at multiple locations in the county. Locations included Los Alamos Canyon. There was a conversation about rounds of the next canyon over to the county at that time. Bio Canyon was a thought. All those, for multiple reasons, failed to gain traction. Final attempt by a group of citizens was back in 2019-ish, about Pueblo Canyon being the actual great place for this trail. They did their initial analysis. It was on our very difficult trail on the canyon rim, and they had asked council for some money. And as they got into it, it was obvious that the money that they were looking for this project wasn't going to work. About the same time, council approved in 2019 some money for a skills park and some money for a pump track. I don't know the reason for that. I've had trouble finding that, but because it was put in there, I'm assuming there were some citizen concerns or citizen wants. So these are all about citizen wants in our community. Since Bio Canyon was the last feasible part at that point in time, that's why it's the place where this particular project is. Tonight, we're not going to have a whole bunch of discussion about alternate locations. If you want to have that conversation, I'll be happy to give you my card and we can have those conversations in between them. This really is the only place for this, with the exception of the pump track. The pump track could have an alternate location.
Did you say Bio Canyon?
Bio Canyon was one of the ones that was looked at. We've had listening sessions since January. We've had groups very similar to this one, that we had a very broad spectrum of contingencies. We've also had some listening sessions with our youth at the Youth Activity Center and the Teen Center. We brought this concept with the 5 trails we're going to talk about tonight. We went through the park board. They approved supporting it at the council level. We asked for $50,000 to do a conceptual study. That means that similar to a feasibility study. Will it fit here? Are there any issues? Council supported that by authorizing the $50,000 for the conceptual study. From the listening sessions, you're seeing the feedback from those listening sessions tonight. And some of the key concerns we heard in those listening sessions were consideration of our threatened and endangered species, historical and cultural protection, user conflicts. And then we also had the conversations about an emerging youth group, the National Interscholastic Cycling Association. They really don't have any place to practice here. So part of this is going to show a NICA route. What we want to do is please listen, provide your comments, your thoughts. They are valuable. We want to get those. After we do the presentations tonight, we're going to do each of the 5 trails. We'll have a discussion after each trail is presented. We got 5 of them in about 90 minutes to do that. So please think about your statement if you want to make one. We're going through here, kind of be brief, want to capture it. But we're gonna have to get through all 5 of these tonight. There'll be another meeting next Tuesday, the 10th. If we don't cover all your concerns this evening. Finally, at the end, you're going to receive a card. You're here in person. Everyone on is joining hybrid tonight. We've got a poll that's going to be given to you. It's going to be simple with the 5 trails. Do you support or not support it? If you support it, we ask you to rank it 1 through 5. 1 being the most important, you'd like to see happen. 5, I like it, but I'm lukewarm about it. With that, I'd like to introduce Claudia Horn from the Design Office, who's been our consultant on this. She's going to introduce her team. She'll go through it. And again, thank you all so much for coming here this evening.
Thanks, Corey. Thanks everyone for being here in person and on hybrid. Did you have a question to start with?
Yeah, a question for Corey. He said you support or not support. Is that support or not support as presented tonight?
Yes, if you do not hear that your concern has been addressed, then yes.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Thanks everyone. So I'm going to go through just the 5 trails that we've been asked to look at. So just as a recap, if you can advance to the next slide, the trails that we're looking at are the 7-mile trail, the connector trail, which extends from the roundabout to the aquatic center, the bike skills park, the NICA route, and the equestrian trail off of North Base. So those are the 5 that we've been asked as our scope of work. So just to give you a little bit next background on our team, for those of you who have not participated in other meetings that we've conducted, focus group meetings, design office, I'm here with Patrick Sinot. We're a local landscape architecture and planning firm based out of Santa Fe. We've done multiple trail projects and signing projects in the region, including Walter Trails. Tony Boone Trails. Tony Boone is here remotely. He's done hundreds of trails, implementing them and overseeing them so he understands trail planning and implementation, and from the construction side, the planning side, and the administrative side. So he's done work all over the world, but he's based in San Diego. John Altschild is here also remotely. He's been helping us with the trail planning and did a comprehensive kind of drone imagery of the Pueblo Canyon so that we could see what the existing trails were and get a good understanding of existing conditions. And then Jeff and Eric from
Claudia, sorry to interrupt. On Zoom, we cannot hear anything.
Oh. Okay.
Give me just 2 seconds. I'm not sure why.
Shall I keep speaking?
It's like they
Can you hear
can't
me
see
now?
the slides either.
We can hear you guys a little bit now. And are you able to share the screen so that the Zoom folks can see the presentation?
Oh, so you can't see the presentation either.
Oops. Bear with me.
Nope. No problem.
Hang in there.
Guess it would help to share the screen, huh? I do apologize.
Audio is much better now, at least for me.
Great. Okay, so you can hear me? Okay.
Yep, much better. Thank you.
Okay, good. All right. So I just, for those who did not hear, I went over the 5 projects, which are the 7-mile trail, the connector trail from the roundabout to the aquatic center, the bike skills park, the NICA route, and the equestrian trail. And I'm just going through our project team and was just about to talk about McGill Trails. They are experienced both in the planning and in the implementation of bike skills parks, and they're based out of Colorado. So that's our team, and I think we've got a great team that understands local conditions and understands both from the planning, the administrative and the, and maintenance and, construction side of things. Okay, next. With that, I'm gonna launch right into this, or maybe recap a little bit, in advance.
I'm trying to figure out why it's not going through.
Okay, as she pulls that up, to add to what Corey mentioned about just kind of where we've come, we started this project in November doing the existing conditions analysis and data gathering, and started doing focus group meetings in January, followed up with kind of just focused on specific trail representatives, getting their feedback in March and April, and here we are at the public meeting. So like Corey said, we've got another one on the 10th too that you can participate in. Okay, so all of this public input through these have revealed a number of issues and concerns that that you are all, or some of you have brought up. So I'm just going to touch on a few things. We understand that environmental and cultural concerns are a big part of some of your concerns with these trail projects. So this mapping here to the right, the top to illustrate U.S. Forest Wildlife Service, U.S. Federal Wildlife Service. Those are
Fish and
Fish and Wildlife. Thank you. So those are the tones on there. The upper one is the Mexican spotted owl. It's a threatened species. That is the critical habitat. The hatched area beyond is the range of the owl. Underneath that is the Jemez Mountain salamander, which is an endangered species. So you can see its range also extends to the east into areas of Los Alamos, and in particular focused on canyons. So that's just to show you that we're very we understand that this is something that we would like to do what we can to protect the habitat of these species, and that any planning moving forward will follow proper protocol to conduct any sort of additional investigations or anything that's needed as necessary.
Question.
If I can just point out, this bottom illustration here indicates this is data that we received from Los Alamos County, which is mapped sensitive bird habitat. So those are polygons. So it's a little difficult to see because it's yellow. Those will come up in the trail maps that will show at a much larger scale. So that's areas within the canyon of Pueblo Canyon, and also a little further down by the Y, the wetland habitat area. And we're also cognizant of both historic and cultural sites as well.
Just so I understand the maps, the blue on the top map is critical habitat designation, and
And
the hatching,
range.
is the range.
Yes.
And then the same thing, we got the beige, which is the critical habitat versus the range.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. And then the next slide goes over a little bit more of what Corey was mentioning, some of the concerns about just the project scope and its location, making sure that, we provide intermediate and beginner trails, but some folks think that we're fine with the trails that we have right now. So there are these, that is all something that has to be reconciled through this process. So this just identifies, these are some of the issues that have been brought forward in the context of these focus group meetings and public input. The bike skills park, some of the concerns are its location, limiting disturbance. The NICA route is identifying a good location for the route and having a location for beginners and intermediates to practice and to introduce families and younger folks to the mountain biking. And another thing is looking at its context. So this is something that was brought up actually by Los Alamos staff, that whatever gets done here, we need to look at, in particular, for the Bike Skills Park, connecting to existing trails and its impacts, potential impacts to the aquatic center to existing. Okay, next slide. With that, I'm going to go into the 7 Mile Trails. You can see here, this is kind of a graphic that you'll see. The red box identifies the length of this trail. So this is going from the aquatic center to the west and to the Y to the east. So we have 3 different alternate routes that we were considering for the 7 Mile Trail. Next slide. The first one, which is the route that we're recommending, and just to be clear, we were tasked with identifying a route that meets in the green blue, so that's intermediate or beginner and intermediate level. So that's wider, shallower grades, a little bit easier for people who are being introduced to the sport. So the route that our team is recommending is utilizing, for the most part, existing trail. So the trail down to into the canyon, and I think that's the ranch road trail that leads you down into the canyon. There is one location, so it's 6.7 miles. There is one location that we think would need to be signed because it's more of an expert switchback because of the drop-off, the sheer drop-off, and the way how tight the switchback is. So that's one location that we're recommending that there be warning signs both in the uphill and the downhill portion for beginners and potentially intermediates, people who may not feel comfortable going down there, but otherwise, and then beyond that to the northeast, the trail as it leads down into the canyon, widening that trail as possible in order to make it a little more amenable to the beginner and intermediate group, and getting rid of loose rocks as needed. And then this utilizes a lot of the existing road that extends down into the Y. So the second alternative is a little bit longer, 7.22 miles. This one utilizes, instead of the roadway on the east side, it utilizes the Tent Rocks Trail. So it's a little bit more of a mountain biking focused trail, less wide. And then the third option is, so the next slide. It's shorter, utilizes, doesn't take you all the way to the Y, it takes you to a new trailhead that is a little bit internal from the Y.
That's the exact same text as the previous slide, as that.
Oops, hold on.
Your text is exactly the same.
The improvements, yes.
No, the distance, dismount, all that. Okay, so where's the,
8.78 or 6.78
right, so if you go back to A, alternate route A,
is 7.22 miles.
okay, thank you.
Yes.
So where's the B
So where's
then?
the, oh,
And then B,
so A is the Tent Rocks Trail.
yes, A includes Tent Rocks.
Can
And
we
then
see the one
B-
before, just one more time?
Yeah,
I see.
Oh, I see.
Follows the road.
Recommended.
yeah, that follows the road. So that's the northernmost one. The second one, alternate route, is the Tent Rocks, uses Tent Rocks Trail.
Okay.
And then B utilizes, so it utilizes the roadway and then it takes a shortcut through the new sort of NICA route trail that's being proposed. So that's going to be coming in the next in one of the projects that we'll present here shortly. But that's utilizing that and ending it at a new trailhead, internal, like just west of the Y.
So you're thinking the road needs to be widened? You said widen where possible. What's that mean?
So the widen where possible are for the trail segments that are not wide.
That'll be the
So
ranch
that would
school
be
trail.
like this section right
Yeah,
here.
and that's pretty steep walls there. You can take a lot of the side of the hill off.
So the net thing of what's different from now is you want to widen the ranch school trail and put signs up that will tell people don't fall off the cliff. Is that kind of and remove loose rock?
Yes, that is right.
And then the dismount section is important because after our initial conversations with the group, to soften that would do too much damage to the canyon. So that's why we've kept that as a dismount area that we know is gonna have to be managed differently. I mean, we could go in there and do it. It's just, it's not, it messes up too much habitat and too much of the area.
Brett, can you advance it one more slide?
Sure.
Because back one.
Oh.
Because this is, because you all might be interested in this graphic here. This is just an enlarged of the western edge, just to show like the dismount location. We are recommending a little bit of a reroute there to accommodate the bike skills park. So that's another thing that we'll point out. It's only 900 feet. But this is for those who are concerned about the overlay with this critical habitat zone or sensitive habitat area. There's about you can see here, 3,300 linear feet of existing trail that is already within that zone, that we, in lieu of constructing a new reroute, we're recommending a very sensitive widening of the trail in that location. So that needs to be done very carefully and in a manner that has minimal impact on this habitat.
You're talking about the tiny little red piece on the western end there?
It's the
No,
green, and all in the green section. which
it's,
is
it's within, it's the
So you're talking-
overlay
okay.
zone between where the blue trail extends over the yellow patch.
Okay. It needs to be down into the canyon floor.
How come you guys don't want to go down through Olive Street, which is already a road, instead of going through the endangered species habitat?
So we were asked to look at connecting with the aquatic center. So that route, if I understand you correctly, would keep you high.
Yes.
And it would end up being a much longer trail.
I can tell you exactly, it's not that much longer.
Well, I mean, that doesn't mean you can't still take that route, but this is like, we were asked to do kind of a 7-mile blue-green.
There's already a trail there. It's just improving the existing trail to make it more amenable to
And-
beginner and intermediate riders.
And several considerations for that was we already have parking at the aquatic center. We have facilities at the aquatic center, whether you need water, medical. There's a road that already goes down in there in case there's any emergency access. It's closer to, really, we're thinking about this for our youth. It's closer to the youth activity center. It's closer to the teen center, connects with downtown quite a bit easier. So that was really those were the deciding factors on why this was made a little bit more viability.
Yes.
Why haven't you considered, you want to start at the aquatic center, that's fine, but you could go and use the Pueblo Bench Trail, go across the high trail and come down Pueblo Canyon Road. And that is 0.85 miles farther, which brings you about 7.5 miles. And it's all mostly old road, would require very little improvement. The only problem part of it is the Pueblo Canyon Road needs maintenance. I don't understand why that's not on one of your alternate routes.
Yeah, I was gonna ask why you're so focused on the ranch school trail when it really is probably the most problematic trail for setting up as a bike route. There are You could go around on the top across the big bridge. There's just so many other ways that avoid impacting the historic Ranch School Trail and the 2 endangered species, which we know are in that.
And go
I just wanted to focus for a moment on the short switchback at the top of the Ranch School Trail.
ahead. Okay,
as
the
you
red dot
descend
there.
into- Is that, if that's where that is?
Yeah.
Sure. What gives you confidence that signage will be sufficient to convince hormone-laden teenagers not, who may not understand that they're immortal or think that they are anyway, what's gonna keep them from going over the edge? Are you gonna enforce the sign? Common sense.
But teenagers lack that.
Well,
I don't know.
years of racing.
Teenagers ride that trail all the time.
Notification of
Nobody's ever
challenges in the trails. That's a typical
Yeah, but it's not doing
notification
that.
for a trail hazard would be signage, and they use it all over.
So I think
So
your
it's
answer to
actually-
my question,
We
you're confident. signage
Hands
is
on
sufficient.
Zoom.
Absolutely.
Raising hands in chat.
I would follow a sign.
So there's a couple people from the chat that wanted to chime in, and I'm also gonna give Tony or John an opportunity to weigh, to weigh in on this.
Yeah. Claudia, if you don't mind, I'll speak to a little bit. I've also been kind of keeping track of the questions on chat, so I can try to
Great.
answer those. So both the in-person and Zoom folks can hear the answers. I guess one of the things I want to stress is we're trying to find the best way to get a blue-green trail from downtown the Aquatic Center to the Y. And part of our analysis is there really, if you want to be in the canyon for that as opposed to on the roadway, there's not a way that you can, without major impacts, create a trail that is completely blue-green the whole way. So the solution we've come up with is largely using existing trails that are blue-green, but there are some more difficult sections. School Ranch is obviously one of those sections. And so that's why the signage is the solution there. It's about minimal impact, but warning people about the features that are coming up. The tough switchback has a pretty good corner before, so you're not coming into it really fast. So we have an opportunity to put signage beforehand and warn people, this section's not blue-green, this section is more difficult, dismount. That way we're not having a bunch of construction impacts, we're not having environmental impacts, but to get a safe blue-green passage that gets down through the cliffy rocky parts from either the top of the canyon to the mid or the mid canyon to the bottom would be a major construction project, both cost and environmental impact wise. Immediately downhill of that tight switchback that's kind of built up on the wall, from there down to really the confluence of the different canyons is where we're talking about some widening and very minor widening. We're talking about, there are some areas that are tighter, so being able to widen the tread by 6 to 12 inches will make it a little bit easier, take it from a black closer to a blue in areas. We're not talking about making it a major, 3-4 foot wide trail. We're really talking about pretty minor improvements. Once you're to that junction, you're on pretty good, easy trail because you're on the Pueblo Canyon Trail down in the bottom of the canyon. And that's, easily green, really all the way down. And then you have two options that Claudia has been showing. You either go on to Tent Rocks, which is a great blue trail, or you stay on the road, which really is a green trail. With that, I'm going to go through some of the chat questions because there have been a lot, and I just want to try to address some of those. So I'm going to start kind of at the top and go through them, and just bear with me so I can go through them, and then we can take more questions. First one I'm seeing is, what about impacts to the Nature Center and its programming? There really aren't impacts to the Nature Center. We're using the Aquatic Center parking lot as the trailhead. We're really not impacting any of the trails. Even though we're highlighting all this trail in blue.
That is, how can you say that when Katie Brule, I don't know if she's online or whatever, but she's the director of Peak, and she came out and said quite specifically that there would be significant impacts going down the Ranch School Trail where they take their kids, and building a skills park in Kinnick Park where they also take their kids. I mean, have you talked to her?
She's who asked the question, and let me back up one step. So I'm talking specifically about the 7 Mile Trail. We're not into talking about the bike park yet, and we're going to, but specifically on the 7 Mile Trail, which is much more about designating a trail than improvements, I don't see impacts. Does that make sense?
Okay, but she does. You are making a statement for Peak, which is not supported by the Peak Executive Director.
Okay.
And I believe the board.
So
She has
So
written.
she's asking, what about impacts to the nature center? I guess I would have to know what impacts. I haven't seen that.
The impacts are that they bring kids down on those trails all the time for programs.
But there's not any conflict difference now than if we have additional people down there.
So making the trail more accessible impacts them somehow.
Well, what you're doing is encouraging a lot more mountain bikers to go down there.
Well,
Well, then why do it?
If you're worse, because it's designating a trail for easier riding.
What I understand is that this is part of a package which is designed to increase recreational tourism. Therefore, you are expecting more people to come and ride down that trail. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing this. Because the trail's already there for bike people to go down, right? I see people going down
The
there.
purpose of this is for people who don't have a place to learn how to mountain bike. So they have a place to do beginner and intermediate trails. That's a large part of what's missing in all of the trails that
That's
are
great.
available in Los Alamos.
There's no problem with that.
That's.
How many
the
people have
rationale.
come forward worried that they don't have access to getting intermediate?
We have a significant portion of adults and
How many are
families.
worried that they cannot ride the existing trails as kids have done since?
I
they
can't,
existed?
and I want to ride with my family, and I've lived.
What trails have you tried to ride?
Oh, I do Quachi Mesa all the time, 'cause it's the only thing I feel comfortable doing. And I have to share access with equestrians, which I'm
What
very
other
respectful
trails have
with.
you tried to
So
ride?
this is, excuse
They
me,
know.
this is, we don't need to go into this really, but just to state, this is their part of the offerings of the trail system should include the full spectrum of beginner to expert.
But that's a
And so-
wilderness area.
That's something that is missing in Los Alamos, so
Right.
that's what the county is trying
It
to
is
do.
public land, but when they did the comprehensive plan, they said to keep the areas
We're gonna let
wildlife.
you ask your question, but there's a bunch of people on the chat who have questions that have been waiting for answers.
Wendy, did you have a question?
I have many. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, so I'm on the East Coast with a sick father. Otherwise I would be there. My heart is just racing as I sit here because 30-year resident on Nickel Street. I mean, I'm just about in tears. No one on Nickel Street that I'm aware of, maybe one family knows about this. So the press release that was first of all sent out saying that there had been numerous public meetings for residents to comment is a false statement. Number one, that is a false statement. I went to one meeting in April where no one was allowed to comment. No comments, except let's listen to who got to comment. NNSA, LANL, and DOE. So I'm a little confused on that, number one. And yes, I am very upset. Number two, why would you even consider any development in an area with threatened species, endangered species, and sensitive bird habitat? Period. Shame on all of you. Period. I'm a wildlife biologist. I started Bandelier 30 years ago, before I became a single mom and then had to get a different job. That's number two. You may be cognizant of the wildlife habitat, but development on it is not a proper means to go forward. I am a mom of two sons they started mountain biking. I don't know if Cameron, if you're in the room, chat up what age, 5 and 7. I didn't know how to mountain bike very good. I got out on every trail in Los Alamos with my 2 sons. My older son became state champion of Colorado. I do not want to hear from anyone that you cannot become an amazing mountain biker in Los Alamos. The current conditions are beautiful for mountain biking. So any of you moms who are afraid, come to me, I'll help you. I'll show you some trails. My 2 sons are amazing mountain bikers because we were always on the trails mountain biking and actually bird watching also. Thank you for listening to that point. I have so many other things to say. I'm devastated by this, but I am going to say one more time, the residents, no, we have not had a chance to talk. This has been my first chance to talk. Thank you for listening to me. I am sorry of my tone. I am very, very saddened by this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brad, did you want to make a comment?
Sure. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. A couple things. The previous speaker mentioned that her son is a great mountain biker in Colorado. That's wonderful.
I didn't say that.
If she is then I'm assuming he has ridden a lot of different places in Colorado. Where trail building is a pretty common thing to happen.
Excuse me, hello?
Excuse me, may I finish? I listened a long time to you.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Now, these other places managed to build these trails. And you know what? The world doesn't, the species, they have the same species we do. They have the same issues, the same problems we do. And they build trails and they work and everybody learns to live with them. This is not a wilderness preserve, Los Alamos. Los Alamos, it's, for all intents and purposes, it's a city. All of these species managed to live with Diamond Drive, with Trinity, with all these places. And we're still, and yes, we're doing our best to try to avoid where we can. But this whole idea that any kind of trail building is just going to be so horribly detrimental to what lives here is just ridiculous. And it's been proven wrong over and over and over. All these places, like you said, your son lives, he mountain bikes in Colorado.
Excuse me, sir. I am going to speak because you're not saying, you didn't even listen to me.
Excuse me, ma'am. Excuse me, ma'am. Excuse me, ma'am. We understand that you're passionately against this project. You'll have your opportunity at the end to support or not support this project. We totally understand your position here. We do have a lot of other people that would like to provide their public input.
I understand, but I'm going to say one more thing because all the people are saying thank you, Wendy. I'm going to say one more thing, sir. My son went to one race in Colorado and won it for state champion. He grew up in Los Alamos. No, so don't tell me my words. Please don't put words in my mouth. That very much upsets me. He grew up in Los Alamos. Thank you.
Has he ridden in other places in Colorado?
He went to like one mountain. That's a moot issue. The issue. I'm gonna stop talking.
Then I'm sorry that I misquoted you. I apparently he has done all of his entire riding career in Los Alamos. More power to him. I, on the other hand, have ridden all these other places in Colorado where they have trail building, where they have tremendous trail building, and it works. They make it work. The world doesn't come to an end because somebody builds another trail. Like I said, all of these trails are you can hear the street traffic from every trail in town. Okay.
What?
I said, I'm sorry, it just went out on me. I hit mute accidentally. No, all of these, these trails are not gonna bring all of our, all of these species to a halt. They're mountain bike trails. We're not building 4-lane highways.
Are we talking about building trails now? I thought
Yeah.
we were talking about removing
Or
rock.
I guess what I should say is the trail, the trail work that's being
What are we
done.
talking about building trails then?
I'm talking about, well, I should be saying, the trail work that's gonna be done. That is being
And
proposed.
guys, I'll just make one more point, and I'll let everyone, talk that wants to, but I know this might be a little bit of a mix-up because we have for this presentation split like the bike park and the 7-mile trail and the NICA stuff into different sections. Because as Corey mentioned at the end, I think he's asking you guys to prioritize those. So right now, just looking at the 7-mile trail, it's really a very, very short reroute that you see in the red on screen, which depending on the bike park stuff may or may not happen. And then some signage, and really what I would classify as trail maintenance downhill of that wall switchback. Like I said, it's 6 to 12 inches of widening in places. It's cleaning some of the loose rocks. It's really in a lot of places what we would consider trail maintenance. I understand concerns of increased use. It is kind of a chicken or egg thing. If you have good trails, which you guys do have, you're going to get increased use. So it's how much do you do to manage that before you get increased use or as it's increasing versus are the improvements, the maintenance, encouraging increased use as well. I'll just leave that there just so people kind of have an understanding of what the work we're proposing for the 7-mile trail is, and I'll hand it back to the people in person.
Thanks, John.
Do you want Katie?
Katie, and then we'll get to you, and I think you had a question as well.
Katie, did you want to make public comment? Katie Brewer? No. No, she's there. I just lowered her hand. Oop, here we go. Let's see.
Okay, now that you've let me unmute, I would love to make my comment. Thank you.
Sorry, Katie.
That's okay. So I've written to Corey at least twice, and I have made public comment at many meetings, and I would like to respectfully disagree with Corey's statement that there won't be any impacts to Peaks programming. We do take children on the Ranch School Trail. We take classes of 20 kids or more. And so a mountain biker coming pretty fast down that trail is going to be a conflict with those classes of students. As well, I'm curious how the designers are planning to deal with the big rock step at the bottom. It's not just that one switchback that's dangerous on that trail. That trail is very steep, and down near the bottom, there's a series of sort of giant rock drop-offs on the trail, not talking about the drop-off on the side of the trail, which is also dangerous. So I'd like to hear how they plan to address that.
Corey, your thought?
Yeah, I'm gonna let John respond to that. That's down by the waterway, which is gonna be a little more difficult.
Sure. Yep. So similar to the switchback, it's kind of about signage. It's about warning people. It's not like this trail is not a mountain bike trail now. We're really trying to manage liability and injuries by warning people of what's coming up, as opposed to trying to create a big reroute, big construction, environmental and financial impacts. I think Tony just hopped on, so I'll let him chime in as well. But we're not trying to make Ranch School Trail a green-blue trail. We're trying to sign it so people are more aware of the risks and more aware of the key features. And the areas between those two that we've been talking about, there was some minor maintenance stuff that can make those a bit more rideable in between. We fully recognize that there's a couple features on Ranch School Trail that for the majority of people right now are hike-a-bike and will be hike-a-bike after this maintenance stuff is done. I'll let Tony chime in.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Sorry, it took me a while. I've been on the phone upstairs listening in, but not able to chime in. I mean, all of these considerations are extremely valid. I'm sure there's probably 20 or 30 other people that probably would agree with them as well. One thing I've seen in beautiful mountain towns in the West is they typically don't go down in population, and they typically don't become less popular for outdoor recreation. It's just a fact of the matter. What we were asked to do was to plan a 7-mile trail, essentially from east to west, trying to get it to blue-green, realizing it's impossible to get it to blue-green. You're gonna have some black zones. We feel like since people already do it, it's on maps, it's on MTV Project, it's on Trail Folks, that the town or the county actually should do a proactive management and sign it to where it's dangerous on that trail if they're going to essentially market it as a 7-mile trail. And here's really the key is, you know, I don't get the feeling here that the county is really looking to create an outdoor recreation destination. I feel like many of these suggestions, which are simply options at this point in time, are really for building a hometown. They're really for families. They're really to have a mapped, designated trail system so you can go to the trailhead, anybody in town, ideally walking out their back door down the nearest sidewalk, and plan and write their own prescription for a half-hour walk or a 2-hour mountain bike or holding hands with their grandkids. So really, we realized right off the bat that there wasn't any ideal solutions to the 7-mile trail. I still, looking at it tonight after months of not being there, that seems like the shortest, easiest route with the least amount of construction to me. And that's the one that I rode that I liked the most from a mountain biking perspective. That's all I have to say.
Road though, they're just going down Pueblo Canyon.
So it seems to me the issue, I actually am in support of a trail to the bottom of Pueblo Canyon, and I've ridden it. Trail to the bottom of Pueblo Canyon many times, but I've never ridden down Ranch School Trail because I don't think it's within my skill level. I'm about an intermediate, and I don't like riding in a place that's that natural kind of environment. But that's the conflict here. It isn't the 7-mile trail, it's Ranch School Trail. It's Acid Canyon. That's the issue. And I don't understand when there's an alternate, a perfectly good alternate route that's slightly longer, why we have this fixation on running the trail down Ranch School Trail. I don't understand it, because that's a perfectly nice ride to go around on the benches and go down the road, and would require very little, very little upkeep or changes, very little. And it's beautiful too. It's a nice ride. But I just don't get it. Why this fixation on Ranch School Trail? Yes, it's shorter, but isn't the point of this to have a longer trail? Excuse me? I don't understand that. What's magic about 7 miles compared to 7.5 miles?
Well, the alternate's gonna be much closer to Green Butte, right, than Ranch School.
It is. There's only one place. I mean, I ride it. I'm not a great rider. The only place I walk is on Pueblo Canyon Road. And that's only because it's in terrible condition. If it were maintained, I could ride down that too.
Yeah, and maybe, Tony, if you can perhaps respond to that, because I think that, a couple of people have raised this. So why not, instead of using Ranch School Road, why not just stay up high, go further to the west, and then come down? So which is the stretch
Walnut
that
Canyon.
Walnut Canyon?
The one you'd want is the East Fork Trail, which is the
It's
easternmost
not, no, the
one.
one I'm suggesting is not East Fork Trail. What I'm suggesting is you go down Acid Canyon, you turn on South Bench Trail. That's, I can show you.
Yeah,
where it is.
give a visual.
You turn on South Bench Trail. This route right here. You go here, you go across the high ridge, you come over North Bench Trail, and up here you can meet Pueblo Canyon Road. That goes right down into the canyon. Perfectly good route. As I said, I've ridden it.
And it definitely is gonna require more than removing rocks.
Are you,
on
are you
that.
talking
But
about the
it's-
service road
Yeah.
that goes down there?
Yeah.
That's very steep at the bottom.
Well, but
That's
something's
what
gonna have to get done with it. Yeah.
That's what
I
I'm
would,
saying.
I
but
would
that's-
think that the East Fork Trail. is
So you
more-
can do the East Fork Trail. The East
But
Fork
it's-
Trail has its problems too, because it
It's
has
in
sharp
habitat as
switchbacks.
well.
And the
Yeah, you'd have
switchbacks are
to
full
break
of sand.
away from the switchbacks and do something at the top.
I mean, you might be able to make it, but,
So I think that's a question. I mean, we can look at that. Our team was tasked with a 7 mile and recommended this. I think, you know, we want to make sure that we accommodate everybody. I mean, this exists, so we can certainly look at that as another alternative.
So if anybody has any additional comments, I'm gonna give you a comment card. We've got several more slides we need to get through tonight, so we'll give you a comment card so you can put your notes on it regarding the 7 mile trail. If you're online, please type your comments in the chat. If you have any concerns or thoughts about that.
Pin gave it.
Hey, Corey, I'll just say one thing about the 7 miles since it's coming up both in person and in chat. There's nothing magic about 7 miles. The task was attempting to connect the aquatic center area because it's a trailhead to the Y because that's also a trailhead. 7 miles is approximately what it was coming to. So that's why it was called 7 mile trail. There's nothing magic about trying to match a certain length. And I think I heard some stuff is a little tough to hear about being up on the rim trail. The rim trail is a green or blue difficulty tread, but with like black diamond or double black diamond exposure and consequences if you make a mistake. So real quick, that's why we went to trying to get down low, and we can manage risk at a couple of features on School Ranch with signage easier than we can manage the fall if you fall on the rim trail. But I know you guys need to move on, but I just wanted to address that since a lot of people were asking about 7 miles.
He doesn't know.
Thank you, John. Okay, so please, give us your comments. What's that?
Who was that speaking just now?
That was John. He's from Chinook. He's part of our team.
Tell him we weren't talking about the rim trail. We're not talking about the rim trail.
He's not.
Okay, sorry, I might have misheard.
Yes.
It is a rim trail, but it's,
I think
there's
he's
no
just-
danger
It's
on
a
that.
different,
Choosing the
it's
wrong-
a different one.
It's a bench trail.
Yes.
It's a bench trail.
Yeah.
really.
It's an alternate route that is a little bit longer, but it gets you down in the canyon.
Is there any way to point that out on the map here? Because I'm having a real hard time following this other option, and I want to make sure that I understand it and that we looked at it, because if we didn't, we would definitely want to. If we did, I'm curious what our notes said.
Okay, Ranch School Trail's this, the junction here down at the bottom of Pueblo Canyon, we're talking about is taking this old service road up, using
No.
that, coming around, or do you want to use that?
No. We're talking about starting the same place. Starting at the Aquatic Center, going down Acid Canyon Trail.
We can't see that. We can't see that.
They can't see this.
Nobody online can see you
That's
guys.
not how it is.
Follow his finger with your cursor.
Well, it's, I don't think it's even showing, is it? Oh, there we
No, the
go.
cursor is right here.
Yeah. there.
Okay, it starts here, it goes around here, if you can follow me. You go across the bridge here, that's the Acid Canyon Bridge. You go up south, this is now South Pueblo Bench Trail. This is the old South Pueblo Bench Trail here. Goes down here, goes across the High Bridge, comes across North Bench Trail, Pueblo Bench Trail, comes up to here, and now you're on Pueblo Canyon Road.
Yeah, I was coming east or west, you're coming like east.
So we did look at that.
Mhm. Yeah.
I see the cursor. We did look at that. It is definitely an alternate route, and you know, maybe that is something that you show if this stuff moves forward. You show both as options. The problem is right where that cursor is, and I think I might have heard you guys talking about this. That is steep switchbacks as well. So it's kind of either that or Ranch School. You would want to. I mean, if I'm being totally honest, just for your current use, you want to do some basic maintenance on those trails anyways. We're not suggesting a whole lot more than basic maintenance. And I would say both the Ranch School and those switchbacks just to the northeast of where the cursor is could use some basic switchbacks to be some basic maintenance.
Well, there's huge boulders on the ranch school trail going down to the bottom there. And if you take those boulders out of there, you're gonna lose a lot of the slope and trees. That's really gonna be a hard problem to solve.
Yeah, and we're not saying to remove all rocks. It's more about loose ones, you know, small loose stuff. It really is maintenance more than like an improvement project. You know, Tony's been designing and building trails all over the world for over 40 plus years. You know, it's sustainable trail design is really what we're all about. And so we're not, unfortunately, I think the vision of what we're trying to portray is we're not portraying it correctly. Just based on the reactions of what I'm hearing, I think people are envisioning a much larger construction project on this than we're anticipating.
I don't think anyone here is against a bike trail. We all live in the outdoors up here.
Okay, again, if you've got more comments on this trail, please write them down. We got to get to a couple more slides. We'll have some comments at the end.
We have half an hour and 4 more projects to go through that I'm sure you also have that you would like to comment on. So this one here is the connector trail. So going from the roundabout to the aquatic center. Next slide. And this one, we're essentially looking at just signing, doing minor trail improvements, and utilizing a dominantly existing trail that you already have. So there's this reroute here that we'll talk about next when we get to the bike skills park. And then there's 2 locations for dismounts that are a little bit more difficult in the northern section.
Remind me again what the green area is.
Oh, those are areas that we're looking at, we're considering for bike skills park.
The green in the canyon bottoms.
Oh, this one down here?
That's important bird habitat.
This is
Okay.
sensitive bird habitat.
Thank you.
So say again, you're just talking about a trail that exists, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like you're just looking
yeah, the other trails just, what are we talking here? Just, we need to do better maintenance?
Maintenance and signage.
Well, why do we need a project to do better maintenance?
That's our recommendation. It's like you already have it there. You just like, if you want to promote that connection, then that's really a big part of it. It's just
So there is no bridge anymore on this? No new bridge?
At one point, we looked at what the possibility of putting a bridge here. And that's an enormous span. So
That worried people.
That goes
it's
100
something
feet down.
that we're kind of walking back from because, you know, it's like, why do that? It's you're better off putting, you know, those funds somewhere else and just like keeping it natural the way it is.
This is proposed maintenance in Walnut Canyon Lake Drive.
Yeah, that's the only
Part of it.
That's the only issue, in that trail, for the half mile from the upper gate to the roundabout, that's between the street and that red.
And the
that
first
red
dot
dot.
there.
That's pretty technical, and I don't think you can make that a blue trail, a green trail.
So this is not intended to be a blue green.
Oh, it's not?
Yeah.
No, this is.
I mean, you can ride on the golf course maintenance trail, maintenance road, if you can't ride on that trail.
Well, so let me understand what you're trying to say. Basically, the two dismount locations, those are known places where it's just extremely difficult unless you're very technically gifted to ride through that without having to get off the bike. I know exactly which one is right where the gate is. The other one is just a huge rock outcropping. And what this proposal essentially is to make both of those spots easier so you're not having to dismount.
No, I think it's.
So just put up a sign. And another thing there is, we've got so many social trails that run through there. if you're new to the community, you're gonna wind up in somebody's backyard. I
Clearly identified.
Well, that's a question I have. Will part of this involve removing a lot? There's, as mountain biking has grown more popular, there's all kinds of cut throughs and all kinds of, I guess you call them social trails that have, where people don't stay on the trail. I would hope that part of the maintenance is getting rid of some of all of that mess.
The problem is you're gonna have, the deer are just gonna rebuild those trails themselves. Well, the trail maintenance is.
Those are not deer trails.
Trail maintenance is highlighting the preferred route. It
Yes.
just makes the preferred route easier to follow.
Exactly.
On both this trail and the last trail, it's pre-existing trails. It's maintaining and highlighting the route that you're trying to get them on, which avoids people doing that because you say, here's the way you should go.
Exactly.
We put it this way.
Planning the route, whether it's by signage or by, surface, rocks or just natural elements, so that it's very clear what's the trail and what's not.
I'd like to point out that that route that they have there is the very one that I was recommending for the 7 Mile Trail. The same exact route, except that you would turn right on Pueblo
Right there.
Road.
Yeah.
Yes.
Instead of going up the golf course.
Okay.
It's the exact same route.
And that's the route that I also recommended, same one he's talking about, January 12th. In the
Okay.
email to
And
you
I've
guys.
also recommended that.
All right, thank you. Okay.
Yes, I requested, if you're gonna rework this obstacle here, I would leave the obstacle as it is, build an easy
Yeah,
bypass
bypass.
around it.
Perfect.
So you go that way.
Okay. I don't,
What's the obstacle?
Those who want to take it.
Well, there's lots.
noted. I don't know whether we looked at that as, a reroute alternative, so.
Oh, that's on the
We'll
one.
make a note of that. Okay, sir.
Well, I disagree that, having a well-marked trail will keep people from building their own trails. I can show you places like Pueblo Canyon, below our house, where bikers have built trails to make them more exciting, to have a jump or whatever. So whether there are conflicts, this is not there's a trail and everyone's gonna follow it. And maybe there's a trail, but there's a really nice rock up here. And we go along here, we can hit the rock. That's a problem.
It is, yes. Everywhere.
Is there anybody on
who's
on
got
Zoom
it?
that wants a question about this particular one?
Jesse?
Jesse, did you have a question?
Yes, I do. I wanted to know what the results of the environmental impact study was. And I want to know if San Ildefonso has any of their sacred sites on the Pueblo Canyon where by Otowi ruins. And I wanted to know if they did, if you have talked to them about this.
Thank you. Yes, that's important.
I think you guys are, isn't that it's another project, it's not this one.
It is.
Can we-
Right through Ottawa.
I mean, Corey can.
Can we answer that question when we get to the NECA course, because it shows that area a lot better, and we can answer that question now.
Okay.
I'd like to have the question answered now about the impact study, if you were talking to me, but if you weren't talking to me, then I guess it doesn't matter.
So the environmental impact study is what you do right before construction. It's not in a conceptual phase. So we would do that if this project moved forward and we actually determine a specific flagged line if we needed to.
Thank you for clarifying that. And the cultural part?
We have several attempts to contact the Pueblo, and we've not been able to connect with them yet.
Well, I know someone at the Pueblo who you might know, Kathy Sanchez, and I could talk to her and we could have somebody contact you so you hear what the Pueblo people have to say about that land and that ruin. Would
Well,
you
we've
like that?
You can send it to me. We've also been in contact with the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer and the Natural Resources Officer, Mr. Atencio, Mr. Aguilar. We just have not been able to connect schedules. We've had 3 meetings that either by fire or windstorm have been taken out. They had an irrigation emergency that we had to reschedule. But yeah, if you want to
Yeah,
have
well,
that.
Kathy is, founded Taywall Women, and she has a little influence, so maybe she can help get everybody connected.
That'd be great. You can send me her contact.
Okay, I will tomorrow. Thank you.
So are we good with moving on to the next project? If anybody's got comments on this one, just write them down or send them to us. Okay, so the next one is the Bike Skills Park. So these are the locations that we were looking at. We can proceed to the next slide. So there's 2 areas that this is all Los Alamos County land that were being considered for Bike Skills Park. Area 1, which is closer to the aquatic center, it has fairly good terrain. It's got good visibility. It's very close to existing services, so the aquatic center for bathrooms, parking, as well as teams. So the teen center, and it's close to infrastructure because a lot of times like you need water for upkeep of the Bike Skills Park. And area 2 is over off of Olive Street. It also has good terrain. It's a little more remote, and there's road access, but there's not infrastructure parking down in here. So these are the 2 areas that we were considering for the Bike Skills Park. And next slide. So the one we did put out a survey just to get feedback on what Los Alamos County folks, residents, what their opinions were about the Bike Skills Park. We got 104 responses. We also spoke to youth about it, so they were excited about having something that was focused on them, on developing their skills, that was progressive, that had a dirt surface. Most of our responses were not from teens, were dominantly from 26 to 45-year-olds and older. And of those who responded, almost 60% called themselves beginner and intermediate riders, and focused on mountain biking, trail riding, and would use, this is pretty significant, 66% would use a bike park more than once a week if it were constructed. And some of the preferences here, you can see the features that were preferred, the jumps, the pump track, the skills features, the flow line, and the surface natural. The number 1 amenity was restrooms, and followed up with parking and then seating. Okay, I'm going to keep going through this if that's okay. We can just wait for your questions. So just hang on to those. Next slide. So the Bike Skills Park, this is where we're working with McGill Trails on this. This is not to scale. This is just conceptual, but the thought is that utilizing the existing, the terrain, the trees, all the features that are down there, we are not taking anything down. The intention is to use the quality that is within that canyon, in that area, that would remain. And we would recommend adding a strider. So this is the little kids with no pedals. That they would have a place to practice, and a pump track for kids. This area over to the west is the area that is the flattest and the most open. So it's the most suitable for putting in these features. And in order to do that, in order to take advantage of that flatter area, it would help us to be able to reroute, do a slight reroute of the trail And we would still need to keep this, like gated probably for, emergency vehicle access and for access further along the middle canyon area. Then the third kind of element of the skills park are these lines. So these would be located in between. There's some existing drainage ways. And so these are 3 lines that would have features on them, a beginner, intermediate, and a more advanced one. And they all loop back into so that you can keep, so you go down here, it's a one-way kind of configuration. At each entry point to the bike skills park, there will be signage, and there's a buffer between the perimeter trail and the skills park. So this shows sort of the zone that we're looking at. This is in between the existing 7-mile trail and this existing trail to the east. Next slide. So you get a sense of sort of some of the images of what we're thinking this would be. This gives you a little bit of a feel for, we're looking at really minimal impact, but being able to accommodate this sort of skills advancement for younger kids, toddlers to beginner mountain bikers. So this is the Strider zone, kind of some features of what this might look like. The next slide shows the pump track. So this is dirt, just mounded to compacted dirt.
So can you just forgive my ignorance and just explain what a pump track is? Is it just to help kids learn to pedal?
A pump track is actually, it's a loop. And the intention is that it's gravity up and down, and you kind of get the feel for making turns. And it's you know, it's the more advanced the pump track, the higher the berms are, the more speed that you get.
Okay, thank you. I get it.
And then the last slide here is, so these are the lines. So really the intention of this is that it is kind of an introduction to what you might come across on a trail within Los Alamos, so that you can get these kind of the beginners, you can progressively work up your skills along these lines, using materials that are found within the canyons with minimal disturbance to the existing terrain. Okay, so that gives you sort of the overview of the skills part. Okay, questions? Okay.
You started this presentation off with a survey, and so I'm trying to understand the pedigree of that survey. Was it sent to a targeted audience, or was it sent to a random cross-section of people?
It was sent to, because it was focused on bike skills, we gave it to the teams that we had focus group meetings with, so that we got their feedback. We also mentioned it because it's one of the 5 projects. So it was mentioned in the initial public meetings that we had, and members who were interested in responding to it, they were given a copy of the survey. But the intention was really to focus more on getting feedback.
But the respondents were self-selected, yeah, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
I got that survey, and I didn't answer it because it had nothing in there about location of the skill park. All it was details of the skill park.
Yeah.
So that wasn't really a public survey. You can't call that a public survey. It's a survey of the people who are interested in using the skill park.
You're right. You're absolutely right.
Is there anything inherent about a skills park that requires it to be down in a canyon versus on the mesa or an existing parklands? Or, I mean, I haven't picked up anything that says to me, why would this need to be down in a canyon in what is currently open space?
So does it have to be in a canyon? I think the pump track, probably not. I think when you start getting into like these lines, it's good to have like just the grade, the slope of the grade is important. So that couldn't be
Grades
up
all
on the
over.
mesa.
But unfortunately, for a skills park like that in the county, there are no other locations.
That's not true at all.
If you want to have that conversation, we'll take my card. I'd be happy to talk to you about the locations we looked at and talked about and whether or not viable.
Okay, we'll do that, but to say that, to have no public process about location and to say there's no other location just doesn't do anything for me.
Okay, well, like I say, we can have that conversation on why it wasn't presented.
So I've also heard in another meeting that you had with staff that you'll be installing fences. You'll clearly be doing significant land disturbance and building structures. All of these things are inconsistent with the zoning that is prescribed for this area in our comprehensive plan. In the future land use map of our comprehensive plan, all of this area, all Pueblo Canyon, Walnut Canyon, and so forth, is all open space passive, which does not permit that level of development in this area. How are we even talking about doing this level of development in this area where the community has already come together and said that's not the kinds of things, permanent structures, fencing and redoing the drain, that's not permitted in this area.
Yeah, and I'm not familiar with that. I'll let Corey
So
speak to that.
So it is public land. It can be rezoned. It can be rezoned. It can be rezoned by administratively or by P and Z board. But again, things have changed in 7 years from when your comp plan was done. And that's just an opportunity. Again, this is conceptual. If you don't like this tonight, we're gonna give you a little card here in a minute that you can say, I don't support that. And we'll tally all those things.
A lot of us do support that.
I support the skills part. I don't support doing it in an area that's not zoned to do it in.
Again, we could have this conversation tomorrow and I can show you.
Having it before you're spending money on a conceptual plan.
Well, part of that is professional learning from this is professionalism and then knowing everything else that's going on in the world about that. Because I can't show you locations that I know there's other stuff going on there. And again, we can have that conversation later. And anybody else that wants to have that conversation, I'll be happy to have it with you as well.
I have a question that might allude to these. It's the county that is proposing this, correct? With public, like suggestions.
The county, the location was mine, based on everything that's happened in my time here, all the research I've done. And the actual items are from the public.
Yeah, and with regards to that, you understand the zoning law and where it would be best to put a skills park, I would assume, yes?
Well, again, zoning can be adjusted.
Exactly.
And it's about the location. It's just.
This was the most optimal position to put in.
Yes, whatever happened to Olive Street? That isn't mentioned. Is that still on the docket here for the skills park or no?
Well, so not for this. So our recommendation was because of its location and access, that this area was preferred.
And I don't know where this is exactly. Is this is the church down here?
Those are the
So the
apartments.
high school is over here, the aquatic center is.
Oops, sorry.
So this is the high school, so this is the church. So this is down, that's
The other one?
steep canyon down there.
As you can see, that's the flat part after the steep. That's the flat section.
Well, I don't want to stop with there.
Okay, then where is the existing trail?
So the existing trail goes through here.
Yeah, this is pretty steep. I live right here. This is very steep.
This is pretty flat. There's a drainage way right there, so we're recommending that the route just stay on the
You're
flat
right.
part.
It is very flat there.
That's where it does,
From you.
it does its 180 degree, it goes west and then
Yeah,
comes back. It's
and
right in that. loop.
I know that place very well because I walked through the canyon to the aquatic center a
That's what it
lot,
is.
so. That's easy.
Is the Guild Trails online and building it?
They're not building it, they're just helping us plan it.
All right.
Yeah.
Do you want to take online?
This is very much
So,
conceptual.
so I would ask them if they, I think they're from Silverthorne, I would ask them if they know about the Breckenridge Beginner Skills Park, which is out by the ice arena at Breckenridge. And it no longer exists because it got so little use, they turned it into a parking lot instead. So I worry about people saying, oh, we're gonna use it, but have they ever used it? My son was very excited about using the Breckenridge Skills Park as a little kid, and he went there twice and left. There's also a skills park in Keystone, that the only time he used that was when he was riding someplace else, to use other trails. So. we make a big
That's
deal
why a
about
good
it.
location is important, right? So people really interact.
And you want to have it right at the beginning of the trailhead, or like near a trailhead, so people go and practice skills and then they get on the trail? You have it tucked away somewhere, no one's going to do that.
There's the visibility of this.
Well, the Breckenridge one was at the beginning of the trail.
So there's lots of other skills parks around Colorado, tons of. them.
Or like La Tierra in Santa Fe.
La Tierra and Santa Fe.
It's right on the.
Crested View.
We have two online too.
Are you guys familiar with the pump tracks that are at the Bio Canyon trailhead area that never get used?
Is that the BMX part?
Yeah.
No, not the BMX part.
They're unofficial.
Those are not official.
That's
So
actually a
why
very
not
good
look at
area.
that first area that people have already made jumps unofficially at? It's right by the road, the trailhead, easy access,
Picnic grounds, restroom, parking.
and there are already jumps and trails there.
Right by the road.
It's out right at the round.
Yeah, it's on. It's
That way you
just
go down.
east and north of the roundabout, before the
Oh, okay.
Bio
Oh,
Canyon.
around that side.
Yeah.
Again, Bio Canyon, mountain bikers was thoroughly destroyed for being in Bio Canyon several years ago.
The equestrians.
Hi, Katie, do you have?
Yeah, I wanted to make a comment. Thanks. I agree that skills parks are super fun for little kids. I took my kids to one in Durango and they had a great time. I do know that parents for little kids need to carry the kids' bikes to where the skills park is. So while it may not seem like a very long distance down that road to the area where you're proposing, it's going to be a long way if you're carrying a little kid's bike. And it's going to be a lot longer if your little kid gets injured and you have to carry them and their bike all the way up to the top. I think this idea would be much better situated next to an existing park where the parking is right next to where the skills park is, where the little kids are going to be, so that you can get your snacks and your water, and the kid who gets tired, you don't have to carry them very far, et cetera, et cetera. So I would really support the idea of Los Alamos having a skills park. I think there are lots of other areas. I guess I don't understand Corey's objections or all the places that he's considered because I haven't heard what those are, but I can think of like the area between the tennis courts and Western Area Park has a really nice grade. Nobody really uses that space for anything. There's a parking lot right there. There's already a park there, so you could have one of your kids riding at the skills park and one of your kids playing on the swings or playing soccer or whatever. A location like that that's really accessible seems like a much better spot for me than this undisturbed canyon bottom location that is actually not zoned for this.
One more.
Okay.
Jonathan, did you have a comment or want to speak?
Yeah, just briefly. I think just listening to everybody, both against and for the skills park, I think everybody would really benefit from hearing the rationale for the selection of the spot. I think, a private conversation is just not a great avenue for that. This is something that's come up through the entire meeting, and I think that's just something that maybe should be addressed publicly or in another meeting just like this. And that's all I wanted to say. Thanks.
So Corey, what were your other,
If you want that, we'll have, I set the ground rules when we started this meeting. If you want that conversation, we can get a card and I'll be more than happy to talk to you. I can tell you about Western area, I can tell you about Foggy Mesa, I can tell you about Overlook. I can tell you about all of them and why they're not viable. So if you'd like to have a
what can you tell me
conversation,
about them?
we'll have it as a separate conversation. We've still got a couple more slides to get through this evening.
Thank you.
Or if you want to stay afterwards, I'll be happy to talk to you about it.
Okay, I mean,
Can I just break in real quick and ask, is there going to be a Zoom poll or how are you getting the votes from the people on Zoom?
There's a
Yes.
Zoom poll.
there will be. Okay, next project is NICA. Okay, so the NICA route that, that our team identified is off on the eastern side by the Y. We thought that was the most appropriate. There's very specific components to a NICA route. This particular one is coming out at 6.6 miles. Next slide. So this is an enlarged plan of it. So here you can see the 6.6 miles. There's prescriptive requirements of elevation difference. So here there's about 250 vertical feet of elevation distance. There's also required passing zones. So on this route, wherever you see a white line, that indicates that it's either an existing double white line, it's an existing trail that's wide enough for passing. And this additional white there are intermediate passing zones that are required along a route like this. So that's what those are indicating, are new trail segments that allow for passing. And then on the eastern edge, that's sort of where we're, let me point out too, is everywhere where you see the sort of gray dashed line, that's the existing trail here, the Check Box Trail. And there is one small reroute that we're recommending over on the east side. And then what's new here is the start finish. There's a requirement of starting uphill. So the start finish point is new, and we're recommending that there be a new trailhead constructed on the eastern edge there off of the road that goes. Next slide.
What are those dashboards?
Oh, sorry. Are we good, right?
In the far
So
right.
Far right, a little chart.
Are we?
Yeah, what are those areas?
Oh, the hatched areas, those are areas like
What's that?
either liminal or cultural sites.
Historical cultural sites.
Yes.
Okay.
They're tailored cultural sites.
With buffers, and we're trying to just keep the buffers or increase the buffers with the trails. But yeah, those are existing areas.
Is all of this in Los Alamos County?
Yes, it is.
Actually, it's
no,
not actually. It's land that's owned by Los Alamos County, but it's in Santa Fe County.
Santa Fe County.
It's a weird
You're
thing that we
right,
have.
there's like a line somewhere in here.
Just before you go down the hill.
Next slide. So this is kind of an enlargement of the Y and sort of where this would be. If you all are familiar with, like, I think most people may park at the Y. We're recommending that, like, if it's possible to have a safe internal trailhead that can be used to access the trails. This route, by the way, is only like, it was shown as a NICA route, but the intention is that it's a trail that is going to be used at all times. So it's just used for races.
And it's mutually exclusive from the 7 mile trail, or there's an overlap, but the NICA route doesn't use the whole 7 mile.
Correct.
Or doesn't use the trail we were looking at before.
Well, it doesn't use
All of it. It uses just this
A
lower
portion.
part.
Yeah.
And they go in circles
Yes.
then, okay. Or in circle, or in where.
And then next slide, when there are races, There's there's start finish, there's announcers, there's teams, there's all these things that happen to support the race. So we're looking at, there's kind of an enlarged footprint for when the races occur that would dominantly be over here. Expansion to that would be, when the races occur, would be on the east side and maybe in some other areas. But as the sport grows, Los Alamos just has started their team 3 years ago. Okay, and it is growing exponentially. So there's a lot of interest and excitement about being able to host races here in Los Alamos. And that's all I've got for my.
How many parking spots are you looking at having?
I think, just I think it was about 20 is what we were looking at.
700?
At the trailhead? No.
That's what the map said.
They're talking about the venue.
Called for 700 parking spots.
500 and some in parking lots that they're gonna make and 200 on the road. So it's right in your document.
So what we did was we were looking at when you stage an event, you have to accommodate just all the components of being able to host that. And so we looked at, from a planning standpoint, we looked at what could you put there. And so that plan that you might have seen was just was an exercise to see what could you fit. We acknowledge that that's not what's needed for a NICA event to occur. Obviously, the more people you can park near the event, the better it is. But you also have opportunities, like most of the time, these events occur on the weekends. So parking could be off-site and people could be bussed in. So there's different opportunities there. We're not recommending a 700 car parking lot be installed down.
Thank you.
Oh, good.
Okay, that is not what we're recommending.
That was a big red
This
flag.
is something that grows over time, and really, like, parking for these events, like, people park on the grass. It's not anything. Yeah.
They're all for it. It's all for it.
But it's not anything like formalized or constructed. Okay.
And so often does it give you?
I can speak to that for you. So
Yeah,
I
I'll
coach
let
the
you.
language team here in town. Actually, a couple coaches and a couple of our kids are here too. They're awesome. So like the whole idea with this NICA venue is that we get a beginner intermediate trail for the kids, and we would also have a place for them to be able to race. Races usually happen 4 or 5 times a year, and these kids need something that's appropriate for their level. So we do look at, like Claudia said, sometimes you have to park on the side of roads or on the grass for like once, twice a year. Maybe.
Trails being used year round, but the events are
The events are
one or
usually
two a year.
1 or 2 a year max, yeah.
So would we see in Los Alamos, like you said, 4 or 5 races a year? We'd see 4 or 5 races a
No,
year at
there'd
our
be
venue?
probably one
We'd get
one
one,
here, maybe 2, but it's statewide, so. for
and then they go
instance,
other
Like
places.
Farmington, Albuquerque, Gallup, Silver City, like it's spread throughout the city.
Okay.
But the kids would be using this course for practice because it's.
Frequently,
like a-
yes, absolutely.
And it gives you.
Especially at the beginning of the season, so they can learn how to mountain bike before we take them on the hard stuff. Yeah.
My question is the county's position similar on this? This is the one single only place in the entire county that this could possibly be accommodated?
Our team looked, and
You looked for the whole county, or I'm asking more the bigger picture question.
yeah,
We were told on the
looked
other
within
ones.
the trail system, and this was the most appropriate location, because I mean, and you saw kind of some of the requirements, like they're very strict requirements by, just the distance, the climbing, the passing.
What were the other candidates?
We looked at further up the canyon, starting off at the high school. and using that Olive Street area there, and that just, it wasn't, we couldn't get the mileage out of that.
Did you look at White Rock at all?
We did not.
So you didn't really look at the, okay.
So from a geologic standpoint, I have a problem with any new trail development, or anything in this section of the canyon. I was out there Tuesday morning just to check on what I thought was there, and I was correct. That entire area is covered by cryptobiotic soil. Cryptobiotic soil is like a blanket. It's created by interaction with algae, bacteria, and fungi. It creates a very hard crust on the top of the soil. And what that does is prevent erosion from wind and water. So when you're out in the canyon and the wind is blowing, you're not getting soil in your face because that cryptobiotic soil is there. You start any type of construction in that area, even extending the trails, you are destroying cryptobiotic soil, which takes 10 years to recover from. So I'm absolutely against anything in that area because we, living in an arid environment, want to keep our soils. And what you're proposing is to destroy that area. And if you don't believe me about this, go research the Nambe Badlands and what is happening out there with bikers who are going off trail, who are illegally carving new bike trails, and I'm not saying that's going to happen here, into highly sensitive paleontological units out there. Cryptobiotic soil is precious. It keeps our soil, it keeps our nutrients, the forest out there in place. And what you're suggesting is going to destroy that habitat. And if you put a parking lot on the east side of the road on that slope, you're going to have a problem during monsoon season or any other extreme weather events because that water is just going to flow right off into that archaeological section and cause extreme damage. That's what happens here with extreme weather events. So.
And healthy soil is the true, like, catering to our future on our planet.
I don't know, who are you?
Yeah, why don't
You
you?
Yeah, I would really like to see, I mean, my familiarity with this area is that basically now it's native pinyon juniper forest. And for you to put in significant parking and event staging areas and so forth, you're gonna have to clear quite a bit of forest. And I'd really like to know how many acres that's gonna be, that you have to clear to do that, because it's, how are you gonna park cars without disturbing soil and without picking out lots of trees?
Yeah, this is not very tree here.
But we have
In
to,
this particular zone.
defining the trees as
So,
pinyons and junipers
significant
though.
Pinyon juniper habitat in the correct spacing for those trees. Don't think about the ponderosa forests up here which are overgrown. Okay. Down there, it is the correct spacing for those trees.
Healthy.
That's what PJ looks like.
Even if you don't build anything on it, you're taking out that forest. You're isn't permanent structure. It's a permanent disturbance because it takes so long to regenerate anything.
Okay. So,
Can I just comment on that?
Yes.
A little bit? So I think that all of us here really care about protecting the environment, protecting what we have. But I think a lot of us have seen, like someone was saying, non-Bay Badlands, right? When you don't give people enough trail access, unfortunately, they often start building trails on their own. So my thought is if we can build trails responsibly, then hopefully we mitigate the damages in other areas.
Well, there is a road and trail there.
Yeah.
And part of
Yeah, so
building
we'd
them
be using
responsibly
a
is
lot of-
putting them in a
But
good
not
place.
zoning the parking
Yeah.
lot stages.
This is not a good place. This artery, little artery, we don't want people, and as Jesse Emerson was saying, you haven't even talked to Sinai or Santa Clara about your plans to build a road.
That road's already there. That road's already there
It's
now.
not here.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it is.
The road's
That's
already
the
there.
next sewage treatment plant.
That's the road the county uses.
And where's
to-
Otley New Albany?
Old site and the new one.
It's higher.
Ottawa is
It's up there,
higher.
up over.
It's for that.
No, the old site is outside the county, the new site is
So
inside the county.
this, we're gonna, well, but here's another point. If we have parking in here, and I grew up in Los Alamos, so I know about raping and pillaging sensitive habitats. If we bring people up here who are waiting for the race or waiting for something to do, what's gonna happen is they're just gonna hit the ruins. They're
It's
gonna-
all, it is all
take stuff.
fenced.
Yeah. people
It's
are
all
gonna
fenced
cross
by
it.
land with signs on it.
That's also an
They're gonna
indication,
call.
that it's simple. I'm pretty certain the mountain bike club would say, if they see people, they're out.
Specifically, our mountain bike club teaches kids to be trail stewards, and we teach kids to be really respectful of the
Yes.
environment. In most communities we've been at, they come to us afterward and say, you had the most respectful kids. They came, they saw trash on the trail and picked it up. So
That's
I
the
don't
kids.
foresee that being statewide. We have over 200 kids statewide, and all of them, we get those kinds of reviews.
Well, I don't think this is the place, and I'm a mountain biker, you'll see me on the road all the time, you'll see me at the ski hill all the time. So I use the trails, this is not a good place, I don't know where there is a good place, but not in this spot when there are species issues and, cultural issues.
Wait, so species.
I didn't know there was a species.
Well, it's a sensitive habitat.
That's also.
That's a marsh. They're not gonna be riding their bikes in the marsh.
Yeah, but, you know, you're disturbing people.
So the ski hill has come up, and I'd like to know, if we got bikers, race bikers, I wanna know about what the problems are with their power wheels.
Oh.
I know it's more challenging.
Private land, and
It's pretty challenging.
it is
That's
very
very
If
challenging.
they do, they've been doing some trail construction up there, and they're looping it so that, you don't get the grade that you would normally get on a ski hill.
So that's
And that's a
alternative.
perfect location for them.
It's not on
They have
county.
Parking, they're all set up for that kind of stuff.
It's private land, they can't.
What's wrong with that?
We would have to get permission, they would have to have an
Well, the
agreement.
county has to just do a contract.
This is also with NICA.
Also, that NICA has a problem doing things that,
No, not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
But I think the bigger thing is with the ski hill, so if we're talking about accessibility to all kids. You ask them to climb 1,000 feet in a race, that excludes bunch of kids.
You don't have.
What about,
There are ways that it could possibly work, but that's something that
I
I
used to
consider.
ski patrol in an area, we ran bike races in the summer all the time. But they were, they were not.
Yeah.
So they were going.
Yeah, I think it's something to consider for sure.
Could you point out what trails exist and what trails you're gonna build?
Can you go back, because like this doesn't, because like this. That one. Okay. So this illustrates here, this white area, that's new. Second is new here, that's a little bit of a reroute. And then these are the passing areas, so they're like allowing enough width for passing.
So what I'm seeing is most of this exists.
Yes.
So why does the high school NICA team need to produce something new? Because it almost all exists, right? Why can't you use it as it is?
If you use it now for practice.
So you can't.
If not, right now, my understanding is that you can only park the line. So to access this is quite a bit up.
I've always wished the bus would stop right there at the Y, because they go right by there every day. And that would be a great bus stop for people hiking down or.
Yeah, it's.
Yeah, we need to.
yeah, the current trails don't offer a loop.
Okay, but that part here is kept.
Yeah, that's where with very little new trail, like you would satisfy the NICA route requirement.
And so with the county that opened up,
Are there, okay.
First off, with the parking lot, was there any consideration of using the old water waste treatment plant footprint for the parking camping area? Because that seems like it's clear, it's a natural.
Yeah, no, we did not. I mean, there's, and that's where, like, the parking issue is something that needs to be addressed.
To me, that's a perfect one, because how they can walk on the road back.
Okay, so that's further.
Right here. these areas.
So
You
wait,
know,
okay, could you bring up a bigger map? Because this is Bio or is this Pueblo? This is Pueblo, right?
Yeah, that's
Pueblo. Well, Bio, yeah. So
It's
that's
Pueblo
just a
Canyon
road.
Road, but you are correct that it's in Bio Canyon.
Okay, where's the Pueblo Canyon Road?
That's the Pueblo
When you
Canyon.
point
Not
it
in Bio. I'm very close now.
Can you go back one?
Okay, that's better.
Yeah, so that's the.
That's Bio Canyon Road, it turns into Pueblo Canyon Road basically.
Oh, the
Right there.
existing road, so this is the existing road that comes in here.
Yeah, actually.
The ruins are kind of behind it. Yeah.
You can see this site from Anderson Overlook, by the way. Look right north from Anderson Overlook, and it's right below you. Exactly, you'll see the road going north, where it turns north, that's where the site is.
Yeah, I
It's
know
all-
that. I'm just having
it's all
trouble
wood.
finding it on this map.
Yeah.
So, and my second comment is, I mean, I grew, so I'm seeing some people here who I went to school with your kids. And I remember when I was in middle school and high school, and seeing issues with not really making the town amenable to pursue the youth of this community, their pursuits. I was, with me, it was primarily with the aquatic center and getting access for water polo and even for the swim teams getting the lane access they needed. And I just think that we all need to also consider that we need to look at our youth here. And hey, this to me seems, as you guys try to make this as low impact as possible. This is all this is mainly conceptual. I'm certain that you guys can reroute the trail, reroute the start finish area of the trail as needed. But do we want to give an opportunity for our youth mountain biking program to potentially grow, versus are we just going to say, because we don't want to see, we see what has been proposed, that's going to be the final product. We don't want it. I feel we should be allowing our youth to have more pursuits like this.
Everyone is on board.
Yeah, I didn't hear anybody saying.
I just hear a lot of.
Yeah,
No.
Yeah, every proposed location, everybody votes against, and they say, look at the location.
We've only
Wants
talked
to
about
say-
single location.
Yeah.
You wouldn't do that with the other locations.
It's just
We're talking about
pretty wild areas.
We have to develop.
Miles of trail.
We have to.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
we have 70 miles of trail.
Those trails didn't always exist, right? Just 'cause
Right, they didn't, but now we have them. And to create some more.
And
is
what-
It's to meet the requirements.
How do we know when we've done enough? Is there any metric for deciding when we've developed enough recreational amenities or enough activities for our youth? How do we know when it's enough? I've never seen any kind of metric for that, for us as a community to say that we need more, that it's worth taking out natural habitat, and access for other types of users. How do we know when it's enough?
When I say so.
Well, that's part of
That's what
doing
we
these
don't
public
think.
meetings, is because I think the public is, you have a voice to say this is no.
Well, this is
But I think
technically for us within the community.
This, I mean, hopefully you can see our team is really saying like, you've got great trails. All of the stuff that we're proposing here is trying to minimize the footprint, making like these really small improvements so that we can accommodate these user groups that are asking for an entry point to this trail system and this sport. Oh, somebody online.
Ms. Staples, do you have a question?
I was gonna say that, why don't we keep all the natural ones in Los Alamos as they are? I have a number of friends in White Rock who they're begging for things down there. They always have to drive to Los Alamos for any activity. So all I'm asking is maybe research White Rock. I believe there's already a skills park somewhere down there by a little park, which meets the requirement for the toddlers. That's all I'm asking, is just please do a little more research. So then we could have our totally natural ones in Los Alamos. And then do some of the parks in White Rock where actually residents, I've spoken to 5 people who welcome this. And I think everyone would agree, it's always Los Alamos. We got to drive to Los Alamos, right? So make everybody happy. I don't know, at least do a poll, right? Thank you.
Isn't White Rock hemmed in by pretty much, you've got the Rio Grande, White Rock Canyon, the Rio Grande, you've got lab property, or in San Alfonso Pueblo hemming it in. There's not really a man that you guys could develop this on without having to beg for land access.
One more idea could I have? How about a trail from, and you guys could figure out where, and no endangered species, but I'm sure it's out there, from Los Alamos all the way down to White Rock. Do you know how many people you would make happy? And you could include the NICA at the end of it. Beautiful for everyone. And there's already parking at the information center in White Rock. And there's already camp, I see all kinds of, what do you call it? RVs,
The only option that'll work for that is Los Alamos Canyon, and that's owned by Lano, and they have not been agreeative to giving us a right of way to do that.
But they were one of the agencies that was at the last meeting I was at. Are they involved in some way?
Well, they're involved in they have sites that they've been monitoring along Pueblo Canyon.
It's just a thought, Corey. If you could research it for us, say that, why not? Why not research? And then we could keep the Los Alamos Canyons beautiful and protected and sacred and majestic, and help the White Rock residents who have literally I've been here 30 years, they're begging for something to be put down in White Rock. They want it. They welcome it. I can't speak for all of them, but I can speak for a few. It's just worth please looking into. Thank you.
There's no Los Alamos to White Rock without going through the lab.
Okay, then forget that. Let's just, forget that thought. Let's not completely override everything I said. Thank you, Corey. If you could look into that, it'd be really lovely. Thank you.
Thank you. You had a comment?
This gentleman was trying to say something. I just wanted to hear what he had to say.
Oh, earlier.
I've been trying to keep up with as things come and go.
All right, great. So I think we'll move on to the equestrian trail. I think is our final, and I apologize, we're already we're after 7 o'clock. Is everybody still good? Okay, all right, the equestrian trail.
Do you want me to put it out to the?
Not yet.
Here, we looked at
one out here. I'll just do it up here. You have to go in the same box. Or you can just put it beside it.
Equestrian access from the North Mesa Stables down to Bio Canyon Trail. The Water Bar Trail is very steep in locations. It's rutted. It's a historic trail. Our recommendation is that we put up interpretive and directional signage at the uphill and the downhill locations, and that improvements focus on the YCC trail so that it is more equestrian friendly. When we spoke to the equestrian community representatives, they pointed out that there are some locations along this trail where they don't have good visibility and it spooks the horses. So making sure that there's adequate clearance both from a sight distance and vertical and width to accommodate the horses is something that, and I think the sections that we're talking about are more on the east side of the YCC trail where there are issues. Obviously with widening the trail and already now, I think there's some crumbling edges. So just fortifying the edges to accommodate those heavier animals. All right, so those are our recommendations there.
Oops.
Okay, no comments?
That's a great trail.
It's hard to do. Do you have anybody on your team that knows equestrian trails?
What's that?
Do you have anybody on your team that knows equestrian trails and is able to say what's good and what's not? Or is it just you have to talk to the Los Alamos equestrian?
You know, they really know these trails, and so they recognize, or at least an idea, if there's, I don't know if there's anybody here on the, there you go. Okay, perfect. Did you want to pipe in on
So
that?
to answer your question, sir, there is a really nice handbook put out by the Forest Service that provides trail construction guidance for equestrian trails.
They should be able to follow that guidance and satisfy you guys.
Yeah, if the trails were built for that, it's very good guidance.
Is that still gonna be a multi-use trail?
Yes, it would still be multi-use, and that's the reason for like having those site distances, so that you can have multiple users, so there's good visibility. Okay. Good, thanks for being here. Go ahead.
Yeah, if I may, a part of the problem with that trail for horses is you can't turn around and retreat. You need the wider space. And you're exactly right, those bikes can skate over this soft hill on the trail, and the horses are heavy and they slide down. So we need a couple of kind of pull-off stations in addition to widening the trail so that you can meet somebody in these long sight distances that you can't see far enough to see who's coming at you.
Okay.
Has there been any discussion potentially about making this specific trail, knowing the issue and being a mountain biker, I'm not a horse person, knowing that horses do get spooked, and the last thing you want is a spooked horse, with around mountain biking, around any kind of cycle, biking, about making this say, hey, because this is heavily used by horses, this is kind of a, no, please no mountain biking, like just some signage.
It's not necessary. If it's wide enough, it's not necessary.
Well, it's technically the bikers are supposed to get off of their bikes and ask the owner. They're okay.
Well, we gotta-
Well, but if it's too narrow, there's not room to get off your bike and get the horse by the bike. And if you put the horse, or you put the bike up on the hill above the horse, then the horse thinks that you're a mountain lion, gonna jump down.
Use this one for mountain bikes, use that for car.
That was discussed in years past, and I think it's a reasonable idea. I think it's just getting down to the bottom of Bayou is the most dangerous trail for us. So once we're down there, then there's plenty of room to meet people and retreat and get out of each other's way.
Yeah. Yeah, widening does make sense. Makes it safer for everyone.
Yes, sir?
I just want to clarify on this, for my own mind again, because I'm getting old, like when it says you support a mountain bike skills park, that means the mountain bike skills park as presented in this presentation.
Yes,
It's not a mountain bike skills park, it's the mountain bike skills park.
presented in this presentation, yes.
All right, thank you.
All right, I want to thank everyone for taking the time this evening. You've given us valuable input. If you're online, hang on. We're going to send you a survey. We've distributed one here. Very simple. If you support it as it was presented tonight, or we've had a conversation that you feel will mitigate that, check support. If you don't like it, you don't think we did a good job on it, you don't support it, click I don't support it. If you do support it, I would like you to prioritize it 1 through 5. We've got a clipboard out here. We're going to do the same survey next week. Our next steps is we'll combine this poll that we're doing here. They're going to go back and make some adjustments based on the comments at this meeting and the last meeting. At that point, they'll also give us some probable costs for this. And then sometime this summer, there'll be a public meeting as part of the Park and Recreation Board meeting that will get some additional feedback and share all this information with you. Again, if you have any questions, I have cards up here. If you want to talk about locations, other stuff, more than happy to meet with you. I'll spend some time out here if you want to talk about. We got a nice map to look at. But I thank you so much. Thanks everyone online too. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
So I'm gonna push the poll up.
Put your comments in the box.
Is that what you use?
Thank you.